Live. Okay, so this live stream is going to be me building an argument for conservative studies. First, let me kind of set things up here. So I did a live stream earlier today. It was the first one I did with just me talking in a long time. I think since the summer. I had a tough semester, very busy, so I didn't do a lot of live streams, but I enjoyed it. And so I went to the gym. I came back. I took a shower, and I guess I'm still full of endorphins, so I want to talk some more. I got the beanie and the hoodie on. It's not because I didn't pay my heating bill, but for some reason, after taking a shower, I like to be wrapped up in something. So it just makes me feel good. So here I am, and I was thinking, what would I talk about? And it's going to be conservative studies. I'm going to build an argument for having more, not more, some conservative studies departments on college campuses. So I'm going to kind of go through the argument here, and and I, I think it's a strong argument. So let's see, where do I want to start here? First, I'll start with this claim. All right. So it's it's been said repeatedly that conservative ideas are poo-pooed on college campuses. I have here campuses can be hostile to conservatives. I think it's more ideas. I mean, people don't usually walk around identifying, especially young people. Some do, but not many, as a conservative or a liberal. It just doesn't go down like that. But the ideas, campuses can be hostile to those ideas. I imagine. If someone would say I am a conservative, then they would be hostile to those people too. But it's really about the ideas, and it happens in two ways. So I'm agreeing with this, by the way. It happens in two ways. The way that people generally think about, which I think is the less important one, is this idea that professors will will shut down a student who builds a conservative argument about something, or gives us a conservative talking point in class, right? So I'm a I mean, I teach basically cybercrime at this point, almost all cybercrime. I used to teach other things, but mainly cybercrime. So I'll use that as an example. So maybe a conservative talking point would be, we don't need to be rehabbing criminals. We don't need to be, if you're a hacker or you've done something wrong in the, cyber fraud or something, just you got to be tough on crime, lock them up, this kind of thing. And, I guess that would be a conservative argument, maybe. And so, the idea is that a professor would shut that down, right? Because the professor is, professors are generally on the left, and so they're looking at the world through a left lens. And so a student says something, they're going to shut them down, or even worse, grade their papers negatively for just giving a conservative viewpoint. Okay, so that's one way. I actually think that doesn't happen that much. I mean, I can't say it never happens, but I think that's the instances of that would be very few. I think what's more important is peer group pressure. Young people tend to be progressive, and so what often happens is if a student says something that's not PC, other students will give them the side eye. We'll talk about them. In fact, I mentioned that I teach cybercrime now mainly, but my university used to have a sociology master's program. And so I taught a course called Racial Inequality. And so I had, and in that class, it was a mix of white and black and Hispanic. And it was a class of about 12. So it's a smaller class. Grad student classes are like that. So it's kind of intimate, right? And people are talking back and forth. I noticed that, white students would self censor. They would let the black students do most of the talking. And my sense was that those students probably disagree with some of the things we talked about. So in that class, a conservative argument would be that racism is very, it's just not that a factor in American society today. And what Black people need to do is change their habits, And that will lead to them doing better in life and close that racial, close the gap between black and white, right? So that's a conservative argument. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, um, work harder, get a degree, start a family, stay in the family. Okay, so generally, white students would not say much as black students. One semester, though, a white student, a very brave white female, um, decided to make that argument, and she would say it. And apparently, as I understood later, she had made that argument in other courses because it's a cohort. They kind of move along, grad students, and so they know each other from other courses. And so she would make those comments in my class. I would let her make those comments, and then have a discussion about them. And then and I could see that the black students were really giving her a hard time. Either you kind of hear like talking under the breath or the looks, or as soon as she would finish saying what she says, then two or three black students would say, okay, I disagree, and just kind of try to drown her out in a way. And so that was really unfortunate. That was really unfortunate. And even after one class, some of the black students came up to me, I guess in a sort of racial solidarity way, and say, uh, that student is a low key racist. And I told them, I said, I don't necessarily think that student is racist. They just have different views, But I think that happens. The iterations of that occur constantly on college campuses, and that is the main way that conservative ideas don't get a lot of play, because the students themselves are putting that peer pressure on. It's not necessarily professors. So I agree with the claim that campuses can be hostile to conservatives. Okay. Another claim is that professors are liberal. Okay, that's actually true. Um, I'm a liberal. I vote Democrat. Professors are by and large liberal, and especially sciences and humanities, they're very progressive. It's quite possible that in econ and business and accounting, they would be more centrist, more moderate. But certainly in my building, where it's mainly humanities, sociology, psychology, history, we are a very liberal bunch, very progressive. Okay, I put here, what does that really mean? Right. So the claim is this. Okay, because professors are liberal, therefore, they're going to do certain things on their job, whatever that is. The research is biased, or they're not going to allow liberal ideas to be discussed in class. They're going to be hostile to students. Um, Honestly, I I don't see that. What's the causal mechanism? Why can't I do my job up to standards simply because I pull the Democrat lever in a voting booth? It's ridiculous, actually. And I've never seen anybody actually show me the causal mechanism linking voting behavior to job performance. So that's just a bunch of bunk. Now, that doesn't mean though, that as a liberal professor, there aren't certain things that I'm interested in. And so I'll ask questions that I, as a liberal, want answered. So that's different. Okay. That doesn't mean that the research that I do is flawed. It doesn't mean that I can't stand in front of a class with many different students and who have different views and listen to them and talk about them. It just means that when I go do my research and my writing and whatnot, I'm interested in answering questions that liberals want answered. So that would be, I'm interested in dealing with racism, or in the cyber field, I'm interested not in telling kids to ignore cyberbullying, right? Because I teach a lot of, in my cybercrime course, we talk about cyberbullying a lot. And my sense is that the conservative approach to this would be to maybe teach kids resiliency, or tell them that, sticks and stones don't, you know, sticks and stones break your bones, words don't hurt type of thing. Um, Fine. But as a progressive, as a liberal, I think that we need to protect kids from symbolic violence, because I think that words of violence is a very leftist thing to say. So I'll do research based on that. Okay. So I guess I'm trying to trying to split some hairs here, but they're important, right? So I mean, you can't. It's one thing to say that professors are liberal and they're asking questions that liberals want answered, and then they do their jobs properly to answer those questions. I think that's what happens. It's another to say, and I think it's erroneous to say this, that because professors are liberal, what they're doing is problematic, teaching, research, what have you. I don't think that's the case. Okay, so I'm building the argument here, right? So first, I talked about campuses can be hostile to conservatives. I agree. I think that this claim that professors are liberal, well, that's true. But this idea that somehow they're doing inadequate research or they can't teach properly is wrong. However, it is the case that they're asking questions that liberals want answered. I'm going to come back to that towards the end. That's really important. Okay. So the solution that you often get is this idea of viewpoint diversity. So let me see if I can pull that up here. Okay. So what does this mean? Okay. Well, the way that I understand viewpoint diversity is that regardless of the issue, you want to have, generally speaking, when people say viewpoint diversity, they're talking about political diversity. So the idea is that, well, okay, you're talking about this from a leftist angle. Viewpoint diversity would mean that you need to get someone or several people from the right to come in and talk about it. It doesn't have to be that way. Viewpoint diversity can just be many different views. But in the context that we are now, it's generally left and right? And so the solution that many people argue for conservatives, for there being so many liberals on campus, is to push for viewpoint diversity. I actually don't think that's a bad idea in theory, but in practice, this is I think in some ways it goes against the mission of a professor to have viewpoint diversity, to make that a big issue or a major component of their class, and I'll explain why. So I mentioned earlier this white student who gave these conservative who discussed conservative ideas in my class on racial inequality. And students said that she was racist, and I said, no, she's not. She's just giving a viewpoint. Okay, she gave a viewpoint, but the viewpoint was wrong. Given the evidence that we have about what causes racial inequality in a sociology class, it would be negligent of me to just say, okay, tell me your view. Oh, really? That's an interesting view. And just leave it. It's incumbent upon me to relay to that student the insights of my discipline, which would mean that, okay, you're making a moral argument, maybe, or values argument about a work ethic. But the evidence suggests that in the theories within sociology and the studies that we have suggest that the best way to deal with racial inequality is not at that individual level, but it's changes in policy. If you change policies, then the environment that people navigate will change, and they will change their actions. So it's nice to say viewpoint diversity, but if the views that are being expressed are not supported by any evidence or research, that's a meaningless discussion. Because it is the case that sometimes you just want opinions, and I do that in my class. Write this paper, right, and show me that you understand what we've gone over, and then at the end give your opinion. That's fine. But when you're trying to have like a substantive discussion to understand the issues and what we know about the issues, you don't really need viewpoint diversity. The professor needs to relay the insights of the discipline and make sure that the students understand those insights. So the solution for conservatives being sort of dismissed on college campuses is viewpoint diversity. I think that's wrong. So my solution is conservative studies. So I'm gonna explain how this works. But first, I want to tell you what studies departments are. Now, studies departments get a bad name, or get or have a bad image for many people, um, because the idea is that those studies departments aren't really disciplines, and it's like it's a center for politics. Queer studies, black studies, Asian studies. So the idea is that these departments aren't really producing knowledge, right? It's just a center for activism. That's actually not accurate, and it also doesn't quite. Studies departments are any kind of department where people from many different disciplines come together to address a topic. So I am technically in a studies department. We have a cybersecurity department at my university where we have people from electrical engineering, from psychology, from criminal justice, from computer science, and we're all trying to address the topic of cybersecurity. And in some ways, this is what viewpoint diversity might mean, or what it should mean. So we all have different disciplines, and we all have different ways of attacking the issue of cybersecurity. And so we work together. We have meetings. We have like conferences and whatnot. We try to get together to write grants, which I can't really do very well, so I don't do it that much. But still, the opportunity is there. So it's a place to work. It's a way for people to collaborate together on a topic. That's what a studies department is. Okay, so that means that Black studies departments are departments where you have people from history, sociology, psychology coming together to understand the Black experience. Um, it could be the same with American studies, understanding the American history and American culture, blah 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 blah. So that's what studies departments are, and those are actually very good. Those are excellent ways of generating ideas and working together to understand a topic. So studies departments are good. In the 1960s, I think the first, I shouldn't say think, I know that the first studies department was at San Francisco State College. In fact, this is the first time I've talked about conservative studies. I did a piece on my Substack, and I'm not going to read this or anything. I'm just showing it to you. I have a Substack called The Neighborhood Sociologist, and I wrote this piece. Is it time for conservative studies? And in this piece, which I'll link to in the show notes, I talked about the Black Studies Department at San Francisco State College. This is the first studies department, at least in the United States. It's now San Francisco State University. At the time, it was San Francisco State College. And if you go to my piece and you click on this, you can see the curriculum. Okay. Well, the reason why that department was needed, was because Black students felt that their ideas and their interests were just ignored. People were hostile. People were hostile to Black students' concerns and talking points. I guess you can call them topics. And no one wanted to answer the questions that Black students wanted answered. They needed a Black studies department to foster that knowledge production. And they got it. And that started many of these studies departments. Now you see where I'm going with this. All right. So I started by saying that yes, conservatives are campuses are hostile to conservatives. I say yes, professors are liberal, but it doesn't mean that they're not doing their jobs as well. It just means that they're asking questions that liberals want answered. Then I went and explained that the answer that people give, viewpoint diversity, is not the best answer, because really what you need to do as a professor is relay the insights of your discipline. It's fine if you want students to give their opinion at the end of a class or the end of a paper or something, but the bulk of what you do is not to look at different viewpoints, but to relay the insights of your discipline and have students focus on that. So viewpoint diversity in theory might sound good, in practice, no. Okay. So the answer is conservative studies. Um, so yeah, you want to. The idea is to take a cue from Black studies and advocate for conservative studies. Now, when I say this, and I mentioned this on Twitter, and I think I also put that same article on Medium, and people commented on it. They said things like, one, political ideology should not be on campus at all, left or right. That's not what a studies department is about. It's actually about um, understanding a culture, understanding how conservative policies could be implemented, and getting some understanding if they work or not. It's understanding the major figures in the conservative movement. Like you might have a class on William F. Buckley or something like that. So you got history, you got culture, you got policy. That's what I'm talking about. It's the same with Black studies. With Black studies, you have the same thing. You have the history of Black people. You got the art of Black people. You got music. You got sociological studies done by Black people about Black people. You're just focusing on the Black experience. And so the same thing would be for conservative studies. You're focusing on all these issues related to conservatism. If you have that, if you have that, then I think some amazing things can happen. One, you start producing research that now professors can legitimately put in their classes. So instead of me trying to like that class I taught about racial inequality, I tried to give viewpoints from conservatives. I did, but I don't have to go to a Manhattan Institute or some piece written on a blog somewhere, not a blog, a newspaper or something like that, which is not as legitimate as going to a peer-reviewed research article or an academic monograph. And there aren't many of those. They're just not. And so a conservative studies department would begin putting that information, valid information, into the academic discourse. All right. They would publish books, they'd publish peer-reviewed research, they would be at conferences, and then it can be a part of my class and other professors' classes. Now, the thing about conservative studies departments is that, or studies departments in general, is that they are really unique to the community, to the state, to the university they're in. So you don't just say, well, let's just go get a whole bunch of conservative. It's the same with Black studies, right? If there isn't a significant Black population in the area, then probably that university won't have a Black studies department or an Asian studies department. So, for example, I think there's a Hmong studies department, maybe several. I think one is in Minnesota, University of Minnesota. Why? Because there's a large Hmong population in that state. I also think there's one in California. I think at UC, oh, I can't remember which one. But in any case, I think in the University of California system, there's a Hmong studies department. So it has to be local. So a conservative studies department would be in some state, in some area where you have people interested in conservative ideas, in the history of conservatism, the culture of studies, culture of conservatism. And I think it would be a good idea. As a sociologist, there are many claims or many things that conservatives are interested in that I'm also interested in, but I don't have any answers. For example, what's the positive effect on small businesses for the culture of a community? That's a question that I'm sure some sociologists have asked it, but I don't know of a lot of those. But my sense is conservatives are interested in entrepreneurship and how it has positive impacts on the community. That would be a wonderful thing to talk about in class. But there are very few peer-reviewed studies showing that, or the family. What impact does the family have on the positive impacts that the family has on people? Now, we kind of know some of this already. That's actually known that two-parent households do very well. But I mean, there's always more research that you can do, right? That's what a conservative studies department would do. I mean, we have this MAGA, this group of MAGA Republicans now that people aren't really talking about intelligently. either they're calling them racists or, people who are, falling for conspiracy theories like QAnon or something, so they're calling them racists or crazies or something. Well, it would be nice if there was an academic, a trained academic. I'm not talking about some journalist at the Manhattan Institute or the Hoover Institution. I'm talking about an academic who is sympathetic and has an understanding of that population, that culture within the American within the American right, and can talk about it and inform us about it. I mean, so there are benefits to it. So okay, I should wrap this up. This has been nice actually. This is my second live stream of the day. Trying to get back into doing more live streams. So if you like this, then subscribe to the channel. I'm going to put my Discord in the show notes. I'm also going to put this article, Is It Time for Conservative Studies, in the show notes. And you can also find me on Twitter, which I might as well put in the show notes. So thank you very much. Have a good night.